Righto, fellas. I thought I figured why not start off doing some social commentary? Always room for social commentary on YouTube. And well, let's go after after a fucking zombie. That fucking pay gap. My God, will it never die? It's back in action, fellas. Yep, that's right. Some fucking retarded firm, the KPMG. No, I do not know what that stands for. They do not clearly say. Although I'd probably guess it's German. They've put out a report. This is apparently their second report on the issue. And yeah, it's all about the gender wage gap. Now, these here aren't actually to say the gender wage gap is this much. No. This is the proportions of the gender wage gap. They're saying it's about, 15 or 16%? Let's have a look at this. Go a little bit higher. Where's the executive summary won't be on this one. Yeah, we'll go up to here. I'll put this up there. Yeah, so it's going crazy. I saw this in the newspaper today and I'm just like, fuck it, this is crazy shit, man. It needs to be had. Right. So I'll probably only do a reasonably rough attack at this. Yeah, so let's just go through. This is a load of shit as it ever is. As it ever is. Right. Onto this. This says enough on the issue. Now, key findings. Here we go. This is the important stuff. Yeah. They're saying that the wage gap is 16%. Alright, 16%. But remember, they're saying that 38% of that 16%. So, what's that? A little bit under 6%. 5% discrimination. Or so they say. So, we go down here and we actually have a look at, the purpose and scope, as it ever says, is, yes, here's something we should go. So, the company that published the report has been engaged by the Discrimination Council of Australia and the Workplace Gender Equality Agency to undertake the report. Now it says update of the 2009 one. So yeah, so they've been, they have been engaged by two companies whose entire business is to combat the gender wage gap. Which means that, they have no business whatsoever. Yeah, so let us go through. I haven't had a proper look at this. I've skimmed through it and I'm too fucking tired to go through the hefty weight, but they love doing all sorts of things. All sorts of stupid shit. So changes. Well, here we go. There's crap here. Doesn't actually say anything much. Implications. No, fuck that. Analytical. That's what we're looking for. We're going to go through and see how they did things. Because as you would expect, the problem's not so much in the data they looked at. The data's all well and good and all entirely normal and expected. It's how they did it. Now, I got a couple other reports up here that they do mention, I believe. Well, this one was a corollary, I believe. Something similar. Oh, yeah, here we go. This is the 2009 one that they used previously. And this This report is the fun one. This is one they love to reference. In fact, if we go down, if we go down a little bit, all the way down, a little bit further than this. No, still down. God damn, there's so much trash in this. Here we go. Is it this one? Yes, the methodology. There we are. That, I do believe, is precisely the same report. Yep. There we go. This report. And we shall have some fun times with that. Now, let's head back up here, if I can get my things right. No, here we go. Key information and sources. Now, this is all so many beautiful things they have, because they don't actually reference the key data information sources. I suppose that's the data, not actually the methodology, although they use the methodology, but they don't name it here. That's fun. It seems to be something they don't like to mention. And we'll see why in a second. Limitations. Limitations as ever. Yeah. Basically, these are your typical limitations saying that, yeah, it's just a point in time, doesn't really mean anything. Results coming down. Hourly wage gap. This is, of course, the aggregate, which doesn't really mean anything. Of course, it's including the... it's using the average work week and assuming that there is no overtime paid, or if they do, they take that into account, but I don't believe they do. In fact, that's not what's done in the method that they cite. So here's the breakdown, the summary of the report. So they're saying 38% of the total is gender discrimination, which comes to 88 cents per hour, they're saying. Now, that's all well and good, but sex discrimination is not what the method they use calls it. No. This, it's Olsen and Walby call it something completely different. Unlike that other garbage, it's I suppose it's a government-funded report rather than some serious bit of literature. This one's actually a lot more of, it's very much more literature. Now, let's go down to the important part. It goes through a lot of the factors, and most of the analysis I have no problem with. Now, in fact, I don't even have a problem with this particular part here. It seems perfectly fine. It seems legitimate. I don't mind this. I haven't gone through properly, so this could be wrong. However, I'm not complaining about what they've done here. This could be, I will admit, this could be wrong. Equally, it could be right. However, they call this part here is precisely the criteria, the same criteria or grouping that this paper, this report that just came out very recently, is calling sex discrimination. However, this paper, the model, the source paper that they got their method from, or they say they got their method from anyway, calls it other female. Now, there is a significant difference here, because as they actually go on to say, up here. Now, what they actually say is it up here? Yes, other female, removing the other implications of being male, not female, that is removing the negative effects associated with being female. So they say. Here we are. Now, let's go through this part, because this is the important part. Other, this is to say the other female, may be regarded in some ways as an institutional factor. And then it goes on to, these are the three factors, or a variety of factors are embedded in the other female, including discrimination, preferences, and motivation. Surprise, surprise. Naturally, it's the uncategorized, because it's very difficult to do. So it's all the other ones are relatively easy. You can actually get that from reports, no worries. It's data. It's very simple to find. This is not so simple. This must be done on a case-by-case basis, as in preferences. Well, they could be easily qualified for certain types of jobs, but they choose not to. They choose to do something else because it interests them more. Or they simply aren't really that motivated in working. Very important factors. However, this paper, to make it all the more important, very much emphasizes discrimination. Beautiful. Very beautiful. They just can't get it right, can they? We can go through all this. Discrimination against women is hard to measure. While some aspects of discrimination may be included within the variable other gender, it may take place at several levels, and it may appear within the variables and the regression in several different places. For instance, discrimination in the screening of applicants for jobs might appear in the type of occupation in which women get admitted, and hence may partly be embedded in the gender segregation variable. Further, the penalty associated with the years of working part-time may be associated with the employer decisions to offer less training for those in part-time jobs because of outmoded gender stereotypes of the workers concerned. Finally, the scale of the wage penalty associated with a short break for maternity must raise questions as to the extent to which this reflects human capital effects and the extent which it contains a discriminatory element. Fun. There's a lot to unpack, but essentially it boils down to, but my discrimination can be everywhere. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But it's going to say this next paragraph's a very important one, because it says basically everything that we need to know, of course. Since discrimination takes a variety of direct and indirect forms, these do not directly map onto the 9% wage reduction that is associated with other gender. Direct discrimination is a component of the other gender coefficient of negative 9%, to say the 9% reduction in wage. However, this 9% may incorporate some elements of motivations or preferences, such as differentials that compensate for unobserved advantages of a particular low-paid job. Many institutions relevant to the labour market are indirectly gendered in some way, thus may contain forms of indirect discrimination. Thus, 9% is the upper limit on the component of gender discrimination, that is, direct discrimination, whilst indirect discrimination, which may have a huge effect on wages, is associated in some way with many of the variables in the model. In other words, the only discrimination that they may consider, well, that the 9% or the 38% of the total is a direct discrimination. And more importantly, this is the upper limit of gender discrimination. This is to say, if our very important motivations and preferences don't account for any of this other female category, if they account for absolutely none of it, none whatsoever, then, and only then, do you get the 9% reduction. Now, this 9% is actually a... where is it? It's actually a 9% of the wage. So it's a direct absolute 9% as opposed to a relative 9%, which you... here we go. Yes, a relative 9% that you would... Well, as opposed to the 38% that it's of the relative amount there. Now, that's not the only problem this paper has. Or, well, it's not so much of a problem. It's just a definition issue here. Very important here. They like their stuff. It's fun. Now, it's saying that overtime payments and overtime hours have been included. So, it's 1.5 pay, but it's only 1 hour worked. But then you reduce that down. So, if you work, if there's 39 hours in a week, say, in a working man's week, but he works 45. Now those extra 6 hours are going to be paid, say, 1.5 times, or whatever the penalty rate is, wherever these people are working. Because I don't know the UK's rate. In Australia, it's likely to be 1.5 times. Potentially even more if they are working late at night, or even on the weekends. The worst case scenario, of course, is they work a full week and then they work on the, they work one full extra day or just a few hours on, say, Sunday, late at night, whereby they'll be getting 3 times pay. I suspect there's actually quite a few people who do that. But of course, they're only working 1 hour, so they work 45 hours. Oh, they get paid for 3 hours, but they've only worked 1. Which, of course, does contribute to the wage gap in such a way. They don't say that they've taken into account overtime payments and overtime hours have been included. That is not to say that they have been normalized, to say that the overtime hours are worth whatever times the penalty rate, which is what you'd expect. Because if you don't take that into account, then overtime hours are however much more, and if one group tends to work more overtime, then of course they're going to get paid more because per hour, because overtime hours are worth more. So let's look at a few other definitions here though. Full-time pay gap is defined as the percentage difference between full-time women's and full-time men's hourly earnings. Nothing particularly wrong here, but let's go on. Part-time pay gap is defined as percentage difference between part-time women's and full-time men's hourly earnings. Which, as you would note, that is significantly more than £7.10 over £7.87. That's to say that £7.10 is a lot on £10.37 is a lot more than 7.10 on 7.87. Interesting. Then, of course, we go on to the overall pay gap is defined as the percentage difference between all women's hourly earnings and full-time men's hourly earnings. So once again, we take men's largest figure and women's whatever pay gap we're looking at. So naturally, we're going to have a perfectly fair system. All right. Oh, actually, what's this? Oh, that's beautiful. We should do a small calculation there. They're saying 88 cents isn't the absolute equivalent. Well, that's beautiful because we can have a bit of fun with the calculator. Now, what did it say the whole wage gap was? Well, no, they're saying that's that one. So, let's go up to say, up here, sorry, I'm being kind of retarded. Say, what is it? Let's do a backwards calculation then. To backwards calculate. Now, we have 0.38 times 0.162. So that's our percentage. So let us go and back calculate. That is the amount of sexual discrimination. The size of the sexual discrimination pay gap. 6.156%. Supposedly. I mean, there's a few rounding errors here, but whatever. So 0.88 divided by 0.06156. They thus say that this average Australian earns approximately $14.3 per hour. It's fascinating, isn't it? That's probably about right. I gotta look. No, actually, that sounds very much close to the minimum wage. Let's look that up. Trust Google to fuck up wage and salary. Although that one looks like it might work. Let's have a look. AUD per week. So it's saying approximately 1160. If we divide wages, yes. Actual, so divide that by 39. $29, that sounds about right. That sounds like the number we had. Strange. They seem to like pulling the wool over our eyes. Where the fuck did they get those numbers from? I was getting approximately half. Because I was saying, oh yes, that's right. Because that was the difference. Here we are. Compared to an average. Well, these are the ones they're using. Excellent. So, there we go. Even so, that seems... where are we going? Where are we going? Yes, so that increased to 7%. Yeah, so it's 7.7. And it's 38% of 7.7, which is not even 6%. As measured by weekly earnings. Weekly earnings! There we go. They love to be as disingenuous as possible. Beautiful, beautiful. Alright. I just got rather pissed off and had to put something up about this. I'll see if there's anything else I can be fucked doing later on. Yeah. Alright. See you around, fellas. Thanks for listening to my fucking ramblings there, guys. Yeah, so this was just something that just pissed me off when I read it in the newspaper and had to go through it to see what shit they went and pulled up. And as expected, it was a load of shit, so, you know, quick little video for it. Yeah, so my plans, I hope to make a few more videos in the future. Hope to do a bit more social commentary and, well, maybe go through some papers while I still have academic access. So that'd be great. Maybe I can go through and debunk some of our favorite feminist academic YouTubers' papers. There's not too many of them, so surely it won't be too bad to go through it. Might be a bit of a pain. I'm not too much of a sociologist, so it might be annoying to go through some of the papers that she references to understand her methodology, but whatever. Yeah, so I hope to do some of those in the future. I plan on those being a little bit more thought out than this one. This was just off the cuff, and I'm half asleep, so whatever, fuck it, whatever. Yeah. And I hope whoever did this painting, this image, doesn't really mind me using it too much in its unaltered state. I plan on modifying it up a little bit here. It's quite a nice one. So, righto, thanks for listening in. I hope to see you again sometime in the future. See you around, fellas.